Today's reflection is going to get a little bit weird. I really hope that you stick with me because it's strange, but it's totally worth it. Once you get down to the bottom of what's here, I think it's totally worth it. So stick with me, even though it's a little bit strange. I'm going to go to Genesis chapter 3, where Adam and Eve have sinned. They've eaten from the fruit, and God calls out to Adam. He says, "Where are you?" And Adam answers, "I heard you in the garden, but I was afraid because I was naked. So I hid myself." Adam, because of his sin, because of his, sometimes we think of it as his shame for being naked, right? He withdraws and he hides himself. But that word naked is not just, without clothes, right? That word naked in Hebrew is arum. And arum has two meanings. One, it means without clothes, right? Naked. And the other, it means sly or subtle or crafty. So the serpent, when he's found in the garden, is described as being the most subtle of all the beasts. It's the same word, right? So you could just as easily translate that and say the snake that was in the garden was the most naked of all the beasts. And in fact, snakes are pretty often naked, right? They even shed their skin, right? They even often leave behind their covering, right? Often. So Adam is, in some sense, ashamed when he realizes that he is like the serpent. He had been made in the image and likeness of God, and he could walk next to God, he could be close to God, and now he realizes he is a little bit in the image and likeness of the serpent. So he hides himself. He moves into a darker place. He withdraws. Then God, in an act of love, punishes Adam by saying, now you have to wear these clothes, right? Now you've got to wear these garments of skin. Now you have to wear these skins. But it's actually an act of love because he cannot stand in God's presence anymore. Now that he's not 100% in the image and likeness of God, now that there's something broken in him, he can't really be in God's presence all the way. There's something that needs to be there. Some kind of barrier has to be there. We see this all over in the Old Testament, that things that are very, very holy need some kind of a veil. So think of like the Holy of Holies. There's this veil that separates it. So not everybody can just go in there or look upon the Holy of Holies, right? Or the tabernacle, when Moses, they had this tabernacle for the presence of God, and it's covered in all of these different garments of skin, right? All of these different veils cover up over the tabernacle. So it provides like some barrier, mercifully provides some kind of barrier between God and us. Now, normally we would think, I want all the God I can get, but trust me, this is God's mercy allowing us to come to God just a little bit slower, right? Sometimes we want all the God, to just descend upon us, all that God is, to just come to us all right away, everything at once. But God is more merciful than that. So knowledge itself, like God's truth descending from above, can also be found in those subtle places in the world, right? Those deeper, darker corners, right? So think, for example, of like a lake. When you look down into a lake, you can't see the bottom, but you know there's things down there, right? Or you look into a cave and you know there's things to find out that in that cave, right? You can go exploring in that cave and finding things, and then you discover some ancient something or other, right? You discover it. You uncover it. A lot of the knowledge that we come to are things that we uncover. And so that's how we sort of like little by little find God in those places that we might not expect. We find God in the darkness of our own lives sometimes, right? We find God in places we don't think God is, in the suffering. We find God in Advent when we are not full of celebrations left and right everywhere. We're leading up to that at Christmas, but for a little while there, we let things get just a little bit on the silent side, right? Let all mortal flesh keep silent, right? Ponder nothing earthly bound. So we find ourselves in the quietness, in this way in which we might feel like we are somehow alone or separated from God, and yet that's the place where we come to discover him. That's God's character. That's his nature. In fact, when he comes to be with us, when he comes to exist with us, he comes covered, and we have to discover who he is. He comes covered in flesh, infleshed, incarnate, right? He comes in a way that we don't expect, in a way that we have to find out who this child is. That's the character of God. That's the nature of God, to come to us slowly so that we might discover who he is. So Advent is all about coming to learn the character, the nature of God, so that we recognize him in the Christ child, So that's why it's worth spending just a little bit of time with Adam in Genesis and recognizing what is Adam doing that's causing this problem. When he sins, he withdraws, and then God comes right after us and tries to enter our world and let us know that he still loves us and he's with us. Amen.